Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Marc Molinaro.
I tend to shout to begin with, so I'll use the mic when we get to it. First, I have to tell you, I came to the New York, I need to do this. You said I had 5 or 6 minutes as an opening, but I want to steal 2 minutes just to tell one Jim Tedisco story. It's a good one. It's actually a lesson.
I'll stay and listen to it.
I served with Jim in the State Assembly, and he was great to me. He was the minority leader when I joined the State Assembly, and he provided me a lot of insight, and we worked together. We fought against however many Democrat governors there were. The first one, client number 6789, I forget his name, and a few others. We fought for the property tax cap and so on. But Jim Tedisco told me the best story. And whoever asked about Jim talking for 3 minutes, that was you, right here. So Jim Tedisco goes to speak to a senior center, right? He starts his presentation, he's talking to a group of senior citizens, he's going on with passion. I mean, you know how much energy he has. And midway through his presentation, this gentleman stands up and starts walking out. And Jim looks at the fellow and says, "Sir, where are you going?" He said, I have to go get a haircut. And Jim said, "Well, we've been scheduled to do this for all this weeks. You knew I was coming. Why didn't you get a haircut before I started?" And the fellow looked at him and said, "I didn't need a haircut before you started." It's Jim's joke, and I stole it. I'm thrilled to be here. I want to give you a little bit of my background and then get right down to answering some questions. I think, you know, Jim did mention, and I say unapologetically, I really have. I've given every day of my adult life to making government work for people. That's what I have chosen to do in life, and I've respected the office and the people I serve every day of my adult life. Yes, in 1994, I was elected to the Village Board of Trustees in Tivoli, 1,300 residents. We're not all related, but we're very close. And a year later, in 1995, having served a year on the village board, the mayor at the time, who had served for 20 years, asked us village board members if any of us wanted to run for mayor. So, of course, I ran home and asked my mom if it would be okay to run for mayor of Tivoli. And in March of 1995, I was elected my hometown mayor. Why do I tell you that? Because I learned as a village mayor the value of public service and how the decisions we make have real impacts on real lives. And that when you start in local government, you also learn a couple lessons. Number one, when the roof leaks, it leaks on everybody, regardless of party. And you can spend a lot of time blaming somebody else for why the roof leaks, or you can just fix the roof. And I learned that as a village mayor every day. By the way, a village mayor in a village my size, you actually did fix the roof. I mean, I was actually in sewer main breaks, and I actually collected the garbage, and I actually helped unstop sewer clogs, which should prepare me well for going back home. But I used that joke before, I apologize. But I learned that lesson in this one, that at that level of government, when somebody comes up to you and has a question, you have one of two responses. You can simply say to the person who might ask about a pothole or a stop sign, or those who come up to you and start asking you questions about passports and driver's licenses and maybe international policy, has nothing to do with you. As a village mayor, you can say to them, "Listen, not my job, call your state senator, call your congressman." Or you could say, as I did, and I learned the importance of doing it, "Listen, not my jurisdiction, but let's get you the answer to your question." It would be nice if the governor of the state of New York actually understood that he works for the people of the state of New York, and that the job of the governor is to make sure government functions for everybody, regardless, by the way, as I say to all of you, regardless of party, length of residency, or where you come from. At the end of the day, if you are a citizen of the state of New York, you deserve a governor who respects and listens to you. So I spent every day of the last 25 years trying to make government function. You know, as Jim mentioned, I went to the New York State Assembly, where most good ideas go to die. I served 6 years there, ended as assistant minority leader, and in 2012, I returned to Dutchess County, having been elected its 7th and youngest county executive. I only tell you that because I've had a long history of being young, and keep it that way. I came into office in 2012, staring at a $40 million budget gap. Our bond rating had downgraded. That's your credit report, downgraded. We had seen a reduction in assessed valuation. And all I can tell you is, as I entered office, I began to think I should go back to the state assembly where nobody has any responsibility. But rather, we got right to work. And we focused on making government effective. So we consolidated county government. We shrunk the county's workforce to the smallest in 35 years. We modernized to be more efficient and effective. And by doing that, over the first 4 years I was in office, we turned a $40 million budget gap into a $20 million budget surplus. We took the bond rating downgrade to the second highest bond rating of any county in the state of New York. And we've modernized services while providing 4 consecutive years of property tax levy reductions. I think that's important because we've been able to make government function for people. We don't step in the way, we don't get in your way, we try to deregulate and make it easier. So 2 years ago, I began traveling the state of New York thinking I just might run for governor. And at the end of last year, I decided I wouldn't. And in fact, I announced I wouldn't. I said I wasn't going to run. And when I did, something very odd happened. My phone started ringing. Jim Tedisco called me. It was, it was a good call. But plenty of folks like Jim and so many others asked me to reconsider. I'll tell you what was most touching for me. There were families of those with family members living with disabilities who started making calls to me. The reason they did was because for the last 6 years we've made supporting those with developmental disabilities a priority of Dutchess County government. And I've gotten families from around the state who started calling and asking me to reconsider. So of course I ran home and asked my wife if it'd be okay I run for governor of the state of New York. That's a joke. But I'll tell you that my wife kind of joked and said, you're going to do what you want, but we've got to talk to the kids about it. So I'll tell you, we prayed about it, we prayed hard about it, and we talked to our kids about it. I've got 3 amazing children, a 14-year-old daughter, 20-month-old baby Eli. He doesn't know whether I'm in Buffalo or the basement. I appear on FaceTime, so it's all good to him. And my son Jack, who's now 9. I said to Jack, who was 8 at the time, I said, Jack, your dad's being asked to run for governor again. And he looked up at me and he said, well, how many times do they have to ask you? I said, Jack, listen, it's not going to be easy. I'm going to be away a lot. The governor raised some $75 million in 8 years. By the way, you can't raise that kind of money without bending the rules and rigging the system. And we know he has. And I'm not the one making it up because we've seen 6 or 7 of his closest associates found guilty of federal corruption charges. A jury of their peers found him guilty. And he pretends like he had no idea. Has no idea about any of this. Joe Provoco, who's that? Hundreds of phone calls being made from his very office asking people to connect contributions to taxpayer support. Had no idea. Crystal Run Healthcare. Thousands of dollars in contributions in exchange for millions of dollars in state taxpayer subsidy for a project that was already underway. He said, I forgot. I had no idea. He's either the Mr. Magoo of New York State politics or he's a liar. I think he's lying. I think he's lying. And I said to Jack, he said, yeah, you can clap. I said to Jack, they're going to spend all that money saying some really nasty things about your dad. Most of them are not going to be true. I said, he might be honest about 1 or 2 things. And then my son, like only a kid could, looked up at his dad, and I say this is word for word. My son looked up at me and said, you coach our soccer team, which I do. He said, we play lots of tough teams, which they do. And he said, every time, even though we think we're going to lose, you tell us to get out on that field and play hard. And then my son looked up at me and said, don't you think you should take your own advice? So Jack takes credit for me running for governor, but I'm running for governor because I'm tired of statewide office holders who ignore the challenges facing real New Yorkers. I have lived it. My daughter has a disability. We've lived the managing through the Medicaid system. I grew up in a family where paying your bills was tough. In fact, I tell everybody, food stamps put breakfast on our table for a number of years. I get it. He doesn't. He is divorced from the realities that face real New Yorkers. It's why we have the highest tax state in America. It's why we shoulder the highest burden of property tax of any people in America. It's why he is steering this state government toward an $18 billion budget deficit. And it's why New York leads the nation in outmigration. We know it. So many of our kids and grandkids, family members, moving to other parts of the country. We lose more New Yorkers to other states than any state in America. And the worst of it is that we lose the most 18 to 40-year-olds. Those who graduate from high school and college because we don't have the jobs to provide them, because we overregulate, we overtax, they're leaving in droves. And at the same time, we're the least friendly place to retire. So New Yorkers who do want to leave are trapped here. I am tired of sitting on the sidelines watching people run for office telling you they're going to bring in this sweeping change and then never actually do it. And this governor is the worst of it because he doesn't think you care. He doesn't think you're paying attention, and he thinks at the end of the day that he can check a box and make you decide to vote for somebody else. There's only one way we win this November. There is only one way. And I'm sorry to tell you, all of you, you're looking at it. We have got to come together finally and say to the people of the state of New York, we want our government back. So when a governor stands up and says 2 years ago that he is the government, I say he's wrong. the people of the state of New York or the government, and his time is up. When he says, as he did in April, that he's a middle-class New Yorker raised by immigrant New Yorkers, I say you're lying and full of it. You're none of those things. And middle-class New Yorkers are struggling every day and need a governor who will cut their taxes. And then when he said, as he did 2 weeks ago, what he really believes is necessary to win a Democrat primary, that America was never that great, I say shame on you. This country was great to the Cuomo family. This country was great. And what is most important is this country has been great to just about everyone who sought to make it better. And the exceptionalism of America has been not that we sit on our laurels, but that we strive every day to define and redefine who we are and how we hope to live. And I am ashamed that my governor either doesn't know it or thinks that that's what you have to say in order to win an election. He doesn't. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm running for governor of the state of New York because I'm not standing on the sidelines. And I'm not going to Albany to make friends. We've got to reform the system, challenge the status quo. We've got to cut property taxes. And yes, we have to uphold all of our constitutional rights, the second and the first. Due process. I absolutely believe, as I always have, that government has no right to infringe on that which is given to us by divine intervention. This nation, those founders, stood in a foreign place 242 years ago and said to a world who believed that governments were selected by God, that instead the people get to establish their government and you don't get to stand in the way. I've always believed in that. I've always supported that. And at the end of the day, if we all work together to win this November, we can finally get a government that respects the people of the state of New York, respects the office that each of us holds, and will absolutely make New York State affordable for all the people who call New York State home. I'm happy to answer some questions. I'm very grateful you spent some time with us this evening. Thanks very much.
We're going to bring Rodrigo up. He's got some of our moderated questions that UCC has put together. One thing I can assure you, Mark, you're not going to find any fans of Andrew Cuomo in this room. We've been fighting against this guy since Carl Palladino days. So what we're going to want to just establish from you.
Put your chairs up on the podium so it'll just be easier for people to know.
Oh, that's a good idea. Well, we're going to be looking for some specific,
I really hate to be above
specific plans. So Rob, you want a microphone? Are you okay?
No, I think everybody can hear me okay, or do I need a microphone?
We can hear you.
Fine. I shout too, so we're good. Okay, so we're going to get right into it. These are questions that the organization developed really to bring up what we think are the most pressing issues here in both Saratoga County and really New York in general. We're going to go through this for a few minutes, and then after we're done, as long as we have time, we're going to go to Q&A with the audience, okay? So,
my favorite color is blue.
yes.
They get tougher than that.
There you go. The first one's, I think, pretty straightforward. But New York State budget is about $170 billion. You talked about the need to cut spending. The state budget of New York is 2 times that of Florida, 2 times that of Texas, and we have less population. So many of the people here believe that we spend too much. I think you believe that too. What is your plan to cut state spending?
Sure. So the governor takes, I apologize, I'm going to try to be short in my answers, but the governor takes exactly what we did last year and adds what he says is 2%. It's actually more like 5% annually. My philosophy is you start at zero every year, zero-based budget. You start at zero. And you make every entity, every agency justify the expenditure. And what we will do for the first time probably in the history of the state of New York is begin to audit every entity within state government. If we can't justify the expense, we don't spend it. If there's an agency that's pushing papers that can't justify what they're doing, there won't be an agency any longer. If there's people in jobs that don't have responsibilities, we're not paying for them anymore. At the end of the day, I believe that we can turn what is an annualized 2 or 4% growth in spending to what should be a 2 or 4% reduction annually in spending. The other is, and I'm sure you might ask, the state does something in New York that no state in America does. It shifts more of its spending down onto local property taxpayers than any state in the country. You and I call them mandates. But the truth is that it is simply a dereliction of duty. The state legislature comes up with an idea, and instead of paying for it, demands that somebody else pays for it. That's why local property taxes are higher. So we've got to start to take those back. And instead of mandating things, we want outcomes. So the state of New York should be taking responsibility for its expenditures. You might say, well, if it's responsible for all that, how are you going to cut spending? If I'm responsible for all of it, I have to cut spending. See, the reason they don't want to confront it is because no one's held accountable. Nobody is accountable for the actual program. So it's Medicaid, and we can go to indigent legal services, early intervention services. When you're not responsible for paying the bill, you don't care about waste, fraud, and abuse. I want to go running towards the problem, take back those mandates, control the spending, and cut costs. So we will go from 2% and 4% annualized increases to flat to ultimately reductions, and we start by zero-based budgeting. And every dollar saved goes back to you as property tax relief, because that is the biggest reason New York is not competitive. So I don't care if it's $1 saved in Albany or $1 saved, I'll use mine, in Poughkeepsie. If it's $1 saved, you get it. Not in a check, not in a rebate, you keep it. So we will mandate tax reduction by tying spending cuts with property tax relief. We'll do it by contract.
Well, let's dive into that some, because the biggest issue with property taxes is the expenditure on education.
Yeah.
New York State spends roughly $22,000, $23,000 per pupil. The state of Massachusetts spends 30% less.
Of course, and they rank higher in outcomes.
And they rank higher in outcomes. And so, how do we rein in education spending?
Yeah. Well, first again, if you're starting from zero-based budgeting and you're starting from either zero or spending reductions, everybody's going to have to find savings. But I believe in localization. What New York does that it shouldn't do is make education decisions from Albany and then force them down to you. I want those decisions to be made as local as possible. So in some communities, that may even be in a school building with a school administrator, because in some districts, a building in the middle of a city looks slightly different than one in the suburbs. And so when you create the ability for local districts and you, as taxpayers and school boards, to have sort of this symbiotic relationship, you have ownership. So I want to localize education decisions, say to school districts, certainly you need to meet certain proficiencies, and Common Core. We shouldn't be teaching kids to take tests, but rather teach them to be inspired learners, invest in vocational training, bring the private sector into K-12 education. I won't go too far out and say I also want to reform special ed, but by localizing those decisions and saying to districts, instead of mandating you do things, I want you to achieve outcomes. And if you achieve them more effectively and affordably at the local level, if you're able to build the relationship to get the buy-in from parents, teachers, and community, every dollar you save goes back in property tax relief. Every dollar goes back in property tax relief. And it creates the ability for a community to have real investment. The problem that we have is that we're not educating kids for the jobs we have and the jobs we need. Instead, we're educating kids to go to work someplace else. So create that relationship between family, community, schools, and school districts and school buildings. You'll start to achieve greater success at a lower cost. The other is, stop taking money out of taxpayers, sending it up to Albany only to give it back to school districts. Let's let you keep the money to begin with.
Okay. So as we're talking about property taxes, talk to us about your opinion on the tax cap. You were in the assembly when they crafted the plan for the tax cap. We've had certain municipalities, even Republican-led municipalities, that have said we don't like the tax cap, we want it to go away.
Yeah.
But by estimates from the Empire Center, the tax cap has saved billions of dollars, particularly with school budgets. So what is your opinion on the tax cap, and would you keep it, or would you try to get rid of it?
So first, let's not be dishonest. The tax cap hasn't saved us money. The tax cap has kept us from spending more money. That's a difference. And that's what Washington does, right? Instead of, they saved you money because they only saw 2% growth instead of 8% growth. No, that's still growth. So 2% growth or 1% growth on people who are already overtaxed, that just means we've put off the pain a little bit. I 100% am committed to making permanent the property tax cap. Now the problem is the governor lied. And I know he lied because I was in the room when he lied. The governor said property tax cap, mandate relief. Yet they forgot about mandate relief. There are some people who might be in the audience and others who say, oh, Molinaro is on the mandate relief team, and that means he was, hook, lines, excuse me. I represented the Assembly Republicans on the governor's mandate relief team. My job was to fight for mandate relief, and guess what? We came up with some great ideas. And then a couple guys met with us. Their names were Joe Prococo and Larry Schwartz. And they told us all the things they weren't going to do. And then suddenly the mandate relief team went away. And there was no report, except the report they wanted. We committed to mandate relief with the property tax cap. And so to those communities that are worried and upset about the cap, they have one legitimate argument, and that is Albany did nothing to relieve the pressure. And this governor over the last several years has said, don't blame him for property taxes, blame your local community. He even said to a bunch of local town supervisors, when they said, Governor, we want mandate relief, He said, they're full of baloney, was his quote. They're full of baloney, was his quote. Listen, in order to lower property taxes, we need to obviously make permanent the tax cap, but also relieve the pressure on spending. You cannot cut taxes without cutting spending. And so that means relieving some of the burden on local communities and taking responsibility. And again, saying to a community, instead of a mandate, tell me what you're going to achieve, and if you could achieve it cheaper, every dollar you save, with all due respect, goes to property tax relief. It doesn't go into your bank account. It goes to property tax relief. And I'll commit to you today, we'll have a plan in a few weeks. I am absolutely committed and believe that New York State can achieve significant property tax relief within 8 years if I'm governor. And I mean not 5%, but 10 and 20% reduction in residential property taxes within 8 years. And the way to do it is by finally putting controls on spending, modernizing a government that wastes your money. It's outdated and antiquated for 2018. If you do it, whatever it takes you to do for $1, Albany takes $5 or $10, and they need 3 agencies to do it. We'll put the collar on spending, and with every dollar we save, we give it back to property tax relief.
Great. So getting to some of those mandates, because what I think is the biggest and most harmful mandate is the Tri-Borough Amendment. But I haven't seen a plan from anybody to really deal with the public sector, labor unions, their special interests, and especially the Tri-Borough Amendment. Our school districts don't have the freedom to really negotiate contracts because those contracts are permanent. If the contract is passed today, that continues forever until the union agrees on another contract. So how do you take on something like that, and how do you reform the Tri-Borough Amendment?
Well, the Tri-Borough, understand the Tri-Borough was a trade in essence, so that public unions couldn't strike. However, Cynthia Nixon believes public unions should strike and the Tri-Borough Amendment should stand. That, by the way, would send us into cataclysmic problems financially. What I offer to you is, I don't start by making enemies out of a group of people. I just don't. If we want to blame the unions for contracts that elected officials and department heads agreed to, you're blaming the wrong people. Because at the end of the day, collective bargaining and unionization, of course they want what's in their interest. But the people who agree to those contracts are the ones who are at fault. So I start with, again, saying to them, I need the savings. I did this when I was county executive. I came into office, $40 million budget gap. That represented about 12% of the county's budget. Now 70% of my budget was mandated, so there was no way that I was cutting there. So I said to every department head, I said to the elected officials, and I said to unionized employees, find me 5, 10, and 15% worth of cuts in your area of responsibility. And the union said, oh, he's only going to listen to the department heads, they're going to lay people off. And the department head said, you can't listen to the union because they're not going to do it, they're only going to do what's in their interest. Well, you know what happened? I got a menu of ideas. And I found the things that the union, the non-union, and the elected officials all agreed on. And we found 10% savings. That's where you start. If you come into this argument by saying, you're bad, you're wrong, I'm right, we get nowhere. So I start with, I need to cut spending. Get me there. And if you can't get me there, we'll have to make some drastic decisions. But I need to get there. And that's where you begin.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit. Over the past few years, New York State has approved 2 new entitlement programs, free college and paid time off.
Yeah,
or whatever you want to call it, maternity care, paid time off.
Paid family leave.
Paid family leave, right. Those programs were passed by Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah.
If you were in the Senate, would you have voted for those programs?
No.
And then would you vote to expand those programs in the future?
No, no. Now, nothing is free, and I'd rather us find ways to make college more affordable for everyone, not just the select people that the governor's program allows. And there's like 70% of the people who thought they qualified for that college program didn't. I would offer you that what I did in my county as it relates to paid family leave, and I have 1,700 employees, was we negotiated it, which by the way was the law, right? You could negotiate it as part of the contract negotiation. So I got concessions in order to offer a benefit. But what they did, and they always do, so this is what I'm going to mandate to the state legislature. They passed those policies without any consideration for the size of the business. So if you had 2 people or 22,000 people, it's the same law. And you can't passively manage that. So number one, I will say to the state legislature, no new mandates on business or communities, none. Unless you can find me 2 or 3 you're going to get rid of. That's before I'll even talk about it. And secondly, anytime you come up with a new regulation, if it happens to pass both houses, it needs to have a fiscal impact statement. You need to say to the public and to businesses, this regulation is going to cost you $5 per 100,000, or this is going to cost you $25 at your local grocery store. Whatever it is, I want a dollar amount on it, and I will not allow a message of necessity on any legislation except in a natural disaster or some major unforeseen emergency. We will not allow it, so that the public, all of you, have 3 days before any idea comes to the floor for a vote to know it, to read it, to understand what the fiscal impact is, and to say to your state legislator it's not a good idea. Or if you think some new regulation is, you could, although I would venture to guess you won't. And the same for mandates. No new mandates on municipalities. I want a fiscal impact to what does this mean to property taxpayers, and if you can't answer it, I'm vetoing it. And if you can't answer it and it's adding cost, I'm vetoing it. If you can't answer it and it's cutting cost, then we'll talk about it.
Okay. So, and we're fine right through these, which is great. So the Janus case, we talked a little bit about public sector labor unions. Just want to get your idea on, or your opinion on the Janus decision. Just recently, Senate, Assembly, the governor signed a new law, sort of trying to get ahead of the Janus decision by making it more difficult for public sector employees to leave their union. What is your opinion on that decision? And would you vote to continue to weaken the Janus decision as governor?
No, but I would say, I mean, generally speaking, it's not fair to ask people to pay for something they're not necessarily getting. Although if they are getting something, they should at least pay for it. We acknowledge. I mean, this is settled. The Supreme Court has ruled. It's done. I don't believe in workarounds, and I don't believe in taxing you to subsidize some other special interest. Let's put it that way.
So don't you see that more as an exchange, though? Because in a way, a public sector employee is giving something up, their right to representation, or choosing their own to represent themselves, or choosing another union.
And if they choose that should be their right.
That's an exchange, is it not?
It is.
An exchange between them and the labor union.
Yeah.
Labor union gets 100% ability to bargain on behalf of them, and they give up their rights. So even though they're not paying for it necessarily, there's still an exchange there.
Yes, but if they are in a position where they want to withdraw from the union, they also, have to live with the fact that there is a bargaining unit that represents other people, and if they get something, then those other people, then that unit gets it. If you decide not to be a part of a union, you don't get the benefits of not being a part of one and not being part of one at the same time, which is the Janus ruling. But acknowledge that if you're going to walk away, you also walk away from some of those benefits that you may have otherwise gotten. But that's your choice. As an individual American, you get to choose to be in or out. If you want to be out, you're out. If you want to be in, you're in. But if you're out, you shouldn't have to pay for something you're not getting.
Okay. So let's talk more about, let's get into a couple of political questions. So at least from this organization's perspective, over the last 8 years, we fought hard for a lot of Republicans to get them into office. A lot of people here worked for Kathy Marchione, for example, to get her into office. Over the last 8 years, we've seen the SAFE Act, we've seen new entitlement programs, we've seen new mandates in terms of shared services, we've seen sort of these bailouts for public sector labor unions, both in the Janus preemption and also the ability to have tax-free union dues. Do you think there's a trust deficit between your conservative voters and the Republican Party, and what would you do to sort of mend any trust deficit that might exist?
So yes, there's a trust deficit, with all due respect, between New Yorkers and anybody who holds elected office, and rightfully so. My position is if you say you're going to do something, you should probably try to do it. And if you don't, or you can't, then you should stand before a group of people and explain it. And I think where politicians always go wrong is if they feel like they have to compromise or change their mind, they don't want to come to you to explain it. I, on the other hand, will tell you that if ever I'm in a position where I have to make a decision that you may not necessarily like, I should be coming to you first. And I'm not saying that you go into the conversation, sort of ready to compromise, but I think where politicians go wrong is they don't spend the time having a conversation with voters. So yeah, there's a trust deficit, and certainly, rightfully so. I'd also offer you, though, Jim Tedisco is a good example. He's one of a body of people. He doesn't get to have it his way all the time. And right now, that body of people, the New York State Senate, is a one-vote majority, and that one vote could be any one of them or none of them at any given time. So how they make that calculation is more up to them individually, but they should come to their voters, their constituents, and explain it. And I'm sorry if they haven't. What my commitment is, and I'll say this to conservatives and liberals, or whatever they call themselves these days, but progressives. And that is, we have to have a real conversation about important issues. The state of New York is confronting some really serious problems, and you're not going to get the solutions by only talking to the people that agree with you. You're just not. And so when the governor 8 years or 4 years ago said that if you're too far right of center, you've got no place in New York, that's, not only is it obscene, it is so anti-lowercase democratic. So I'll tell you, if you're left of center, you have every place in New York. And the job of the governor is to get people to work together to accomplish something and to respect the people that have entrusted them to do the job. So if I have to come back here next year and sit on this stage and answer your questions as governor of the state of New York, I'll do that. And if some of you say, hey, why'd you do that? You want to yell at me, then we'll do that too. But that's where trust is rebuilt. And instead of hiding behind the podium, instead of hiding in the state capitol, instead of just sending out mail and not investing in the conversation, they need to come to you. I need to come to you and justify myself. That is what an elected official is supposed to do.
Where in your opinion, should the leader of the state senate come from? Upstate or downstate?
Well, I'm not going to get into that. I think that they get to pick their person, but it would be nice to have a few upstate leaders.
Well, do you feel as an upstate, I would call it upstate.
Well,
I call it upstate.
let me ask, hold on, wait a minute. I want to ask all of you. I am from Red Hook, New York, which I can throw a rock into Columbia County. Raise your hand if you think I'm upstate. How many of you consider me downstate? There you go. That's my lifelong problem. I have lived upstate's problems and issues. I mean, my community is very rural. We're very, we're sort of an upstate community. But I don't get to claim ownership of either. I appreciate the acknowledgement. But yes, there certainly should be upstate leadership. But again, I don't think the governor should ever, and you don't want this governor doing it. I don't think the governor should reach into the state legislature and say, here, this one and not that one. But boy, it'd be nice to have an upstate leader in the state legislature. And Brian Kolb is one. Brian Kolb is one.
Right, but it feels like upstate is underrepresented at this power center
It is.
in the state. And nobody really seems to care.
I do.
Except you, and that every county in upstate New York has hemorrhaging population except two, and this is one of them. And if you had a leader from upstate, you might.
This is what I'll say to you. There are plenty of people who don't hold leadership roles in the state legislature who care deeply about upstate New York, and by the way, are exceptionally great in their advocacy. Fred Akshar is a good example. Rob Ort. There are a number, but in the context of their houses, they make sort of collective decisions. I think you need a governor to set the tone. I do. I think we have had enough of elected officials and governors who come from downstate, truly downstate, focus only on downstate. You saw the debate a week ago. That wasn't a debate. It was like some kind of finger pointing as they ran for mayor of New York against Donald Trump. I mean, it had nothing to do with the challenges facing New Yorkers. It just had everything to do with one geographic location and two people pointing fingers at one another. So I do think we have an opportunity. I mean, we do. We have an opportunity to elect somebody who does get it. And certainly, I will elevate those people who are honest and earnest about their service. And again, the governor sets the tone. I don't have to work with three men in a room, and I'm not going to. I have no desire to only legislate with three people who have ascended to some leadership position. Those are, air quotes if you wondered what that was. I think that you reach into the legislature, and I'll work with Jim Tedisco and elevate him into a leadership position, in my opinion, whether he's leader or not. I'll work with Fred Akshar on legislation, and I will reach into that legislature and say to people, this isn't about majority and seniority, it's about good ideas, good policy, and good elected officials. And if you're none of those things, I don't care if you're a leader or not. I don't have to work with you.
Okay, great. So I think we want to open up to questions. Yeah, I say let's do it. Yeah. Hey, thank you very much. That was great.
I appreciate
We're going to open up the questions.
Can I stand here now? Okay. I'm going to start with the lady behind you because she's the lady behind you. Oh, can I ask one favor? Yes. I don't know all of you. If you don't mind just telling me your first name. I don't need more than that. I don't need your social security number or your credit card. I'll get your first name to help.
Lori.
Hi, Lori.
Hi. Governor Cuomo went from 222 special assistants to 357. And said that everyone has special assistants and been doing that for 100 years.
Yeah.
How many special assistants, unemployed friends do you have?
I don't. I may be the only county executive in Dutchess County's history that actually eliminated those many department heads. We went from like 14 or 15 departments down to 11 or 10, I think we are now. I have the same philosophy. I mean, on day one, nobody has a job. and I don't mean the people who have civil service, they get to stay, but anybody who has an appointed position on day one, unless there's some legal reason why they can't be removed, they don't have a job, and we start from zero. We start from zero. So I'll cut as many as I can. I mean, if I cut it in half, I would. I don't think there's any need to have that kind of staffing. But understand what he's done, and I think you do. It's not just about special assistants. He has taken political operatives from all across the country, and he's embedded them into agencies and departments, one of which I take offense to most, coming from, I think it was Office of People with Developmental Disabilities, that there's some political person who's supposed to be working to help people with disabilities is actually an aide to the government. For what reason? To run for president. I mean, he said the other day is no, unless God strikes him dead, he's not going to run for president. If you believe that, I have a bridge to name after you.
I actually work for a state agency and I find.
They're everywhere. No, my position is very simple.
In person.
You please understand this. I know that I come to you as an elected official, but I don't tolerate any of it. If we don't need the job, we don't have the job. If we don't need a person, we don't have the person. If we don't need to spend the dollar, we won't spend the dollar. I grew up in a family where, we drank high C right out of the metal container. We drank every last drop. And God forbid my mother found out we threw away, something before it was put to end, She worked every day. So every dollar matters to me, and it's not my money. It's not my money, it's your money. This gentleman, because I said he would be.
I'm going to use the microphone just because not everybody speaks as loud as you do. So.
Not everyone is as highly caffeinated.
Thank you. My name is Jim.
Jim.
Yeah. Your libertarian opponent has made a claim that while his budget is a quarter of yours, he's outspent you 2 to 1. And I'd like to get a sense that if your heart is in this race, that you're doing everything possible to get your name out across the state. And can you respond to that?
Well, he's wrong. I mean, he's just wrong. I mean, that's not even mathematically possible. And we raised, this last filing, we raised $1.2 million. I can tell you that we've spent over half of it. We were on television for about a month. You probably know that because the governor asked me to take a TV ad down that claimed he was surrounded by corrupt individuals, which happens to be true. So we didn't take the TV ad out. No, it's just not right. I don't want to do this, but I will do this once. Sure. Listen, I don't know anything about him. I don't. I never met him other than in these last several weeks. I certainly have seen him out and about. All I see is what's on social media. Now, the fun thing about social media is that you can communicate only with people you need to communicate with. So yes, he's done a really fine job telling a small slice of people how awful I am. Let me ask you a question. Is he running against me or is he running against Andrew Cuomo? No, he's not. He's not. You think he's running against Andrew Cuomo? So let me ask you, go through his Twitter feed, his social media feed, and see how many times he's talking about my candidacy instead of the one and only person we should be running against, Andrew Cuomo. I don't get it. I don't care to get it. I have one focus, and I promise you, I walked 4.5 miles in Brooklyn. Was I in Brooklyn yesterday? In Brooklyn yesterday, in a parade where no Republican has ever walked, has been there since George Pataki. Why? Because I will go to every corner of this state to turn every vote possible. But I'm going to do it in a way that wins. Because if he thinks that the way you're going to win is by diminishing somebody who relatively agrees with you, you're not going to win. It's only a divided vote. Now, you should vote for who you want to. Americans should vote for who they want to. But every vote I don't get is one less vote that I can get close to Andrew Cuomo. That's the way it is. I come to the table with 1/3 of the vote. I'm living and breathing on a major party line. Even Donald Trump got that. So when people say, hey, listen, Trump's, 2 years ago, he shocked the world. And maybe he did. But you know what he also said? He said he'd never run as an independent. You know why? Because he needed the base vote to show up. And so at the end of the day, I'm telling you, as clear as I'm standing here, we can't agree on everything. We won't agree on everything. But I will work every single day to win this election and restore power of government to the people of the state of New York. That will be my mission every day.
Okay, so
Your name?
My name is Kevin.
Kevin.
Stand up, Jeff.
Earlier,
Stand up and just
earlier you
talk
spoke
loud.
about getting rid of waste in government agencies, holding them accountable by the top level people. holding them accountable, and then trickle down to the people that are not doing work, that kind of thing.
I'd also trickle up, but go ahead.
Right, trickle up. Okay, so I know of at least one person in one state agency that it took them 14 years to get this person out. This person did absolutely nothing. They were completely incompetent, but they couldn't do it. You know why? Because the people, the management layers who have the power to do it would refuse to do it because the union regulations to get that person out of their position were too onerous. If you hold, how are you going to hold these people who are in these agencies, who are actually responsible for the execution of getting these types of people out of their positions when they do absolutely nothing? How are you going to accomplish that?
First, I would say it was probably not union regulations, but New York State civil service law that precluded the elimination.
Yes.
There are ways to do that. I've done it as county executive. I don't want to go into every detail, but to say to you, we call it, there's like a daisy chain. You can pull one position out, which bumps somebody to another position. There's a way to get to it, but you start by defunding it. You understand, at the end of the day, the governor has the ability, with a state budget, to present the number of positions that he or she wants. And certainly there's a way to get there. If I had to, which I did as county executive, if we have to, we'll do early retirement. You know, we'll give those opportunities. We were able to shrink it. Understand what I did. In the first year of being county executive, we eliminated 112 jobs. We had 1,700 to begin with. That is not a small number of people to totally eliminate. We did it through early retirement incentives, and instead of, like most governments do, and in fact some of you might even think of it, right, which is we eliminate a job, and then if you hire somebody new in that position, it's probably less salary. No, I eliminated the job. And I said to departments, if you can't eliminate that job, then you need to eliminate one that's equal in salary. And we just got rid of it. So you get there by using the tools that you're given. The other is, if there's somebody above them that isn't doing their job, and I have discretion, well, then we're going to tell them to do their job. If you're protecting somebody who isn't doing their work because you don't want to go through the work, then find another line job.
It wasn't that they were protecting them, they were moving them around from unit to unit because it was just too onerous to go through the process.
What we do in my county, and I understand this, I understand that this is a bigger government, it's, you get counseled, and if you're not doing your job, you get eliminated. That's the way it works. And there are ways to get there. And I'm not trying to be rude about it. If you're taking advantage of taxpayers, you don't get to keep your work. Now here's a great example that the governor allowed to happen, right? Woman comes forward in an inspector general's investigation, acknowledges that somebody was abusing in a harassing way an employee, and of course the governor who speaks about protecting women, what was his reaction? It was, of course, right, to fire the harasser. No. It was to fire the woman who had the courage to stand up. And then another woman he assigned to a closet, an actual closet in a hallway. Now, my opinion is it starts with me. So I'll handle the ones I have discretion over, and hopefully that sends a chilling effect to those who think they can take advantage of taxpayers at any layer of government. That's the standard. The other, and I do this as county executive, we're not perfect, but we also remind people that they have one boss, and it isn't me. It's the taxpayer. It's the taxpayer. So when I get calls about an employee who isn't doing their job from taxpayers, we explain to them that to the employee that they're your employer. That's how this works. So we start to begin to set a standard. But I'll tell you, there are ways to get to it. It just takes will. I'm willing to do it. Now I don't want to send people. People should be unemployed if they're doing their job. And I'm not looking to gut the system, but we do have to restrain it, restrict it, and consolidate every area we can to get the highest return on the investment. You can't possibly suggest that New York State spends twice as much as Florida and we get twice as much benefit. Now, I'm not saying we should look like that, but I am saying that if we can't justify it, if we're spending millions of dollars, good example, today the governor announced that the second lanes of the Tappan Zee Bridge, yes, I will always call it the Tappan Zee Bridge. The Tappan Zee Bridge are going to be open this week. And by the way, he's going to build big statues. Get this, he announced today that there were going to be big statues built on either side of the bridge. I feel like we're something out of the Roman Empire. But while he's diverted dollars to do this, and we should build bridges, the Thruway has gone from 90% good to excellent condition to 40% good to excellent condition. So if we're spending your money, we better get something in return. Otherwise, we shouldn't be spending your money. And that includes people. Yes, sir.
My name is Roy. First of all, I appreciate you coming here, and I appreciate your comments. My question is twofold. The first part of it is, we all know that King Andy won the last election, okay, by taking the boroughs of Westchester. The rest of the state went red, but it didn't matter. It's been estimated by people that I've talked to that it's at least a $20 million problem for you, okay, to go to the boroughs and the progressive downstate area and win. How do you propose you're going to do that?
Well, they're wrong. It's not a $20 million prospect. In fact, the fellow who just is now, not that I would say it's the same party, but the fellow who's now the Democrat nominee for governor of Florida, I think spent $100,000. But in 2018, it's a different world. It is. But you have to help. And so to your question just a moment ago about other people, if I'm spending a lot of our time debating about whether or not I truly care about upstate, which I do, that means I can't be doing the other things that need to happen in order to win the other votes. We have to do both. So if I leave today and 5 of you or 10 of you don't like me, I'm happy, I understand, I respect your positions. I'm not happy, but I'll respect it. But I need everybody to go back to your social media feeds, your Twitter feed, your community, your friends, and even the people who aren't your friends, and say we have one opportunity to win. That's it. It's this November. That's it. Otherwise, we're in the forest or the desert. Now, to your point, that means, though, that we have to work downstate, too. So we're doing everything we can to be upstate and downstate at the same time. I love it, by the way. I post online that I'm in Western New York. And when I post online I'm in Western New York, somebody says, you should be on Long Island. So when I go to Long Island, they say, why aren't you in Western New York? It's a fun game that we get to play. But let me offer you this. First of all, the rest of the state was not red. I don't discredit him, but Rob Astorino didn't win, I think, 6 counties upstate, including Erie. Have to win Erie County in order to win. Have to win Erie County. We will win Erie County. There's several other counties that I think we win. Maybe 1 or 2 upstate counties will not come our way, but I think that you'll be able to help in that. So then when you look downstate, they didn't win Richmond County, Staten Island. You have to win Staten Island. Molinaro has a little bit, maybe some people think I'm from Staten Island. I'm not. I think we win Staten Island, which means the Hudson Valley and Long Island are really become serious battlegrounds. We have to win Suffolk. We have to not lose and hopefully win Nassau, and then of course we've got to break even or do well in the Mid-Hudson Valley. I would offer to you, and you might not like what I'm about to say, but our ticket allows us to win those places. Though our ticket allows us to relate to Hudson Valley and Long Island people in a way that, frankly, no other ticket can. And my point of that is that you've got to let us work those areas. I'm going to be upstate and continue to be upstate. I have been. But we have to be able to work hard in those places. And we'll win, not by spending more money, because we're not going to raise more money. Not to mention, you shouldn't want us to have that kind of money. It's criminal. But we'll have enough to be competitive. We do have enough to be competitive. And we'll use every resource in every creative way. I'm telling you, I walked 4.5 miles, and I walked down the street in the middle of New York City, and these people were yelling at me, "We love your mom." They apparently saw my mother's television ad. So my point is, we're doing digital. We're doing all the things that you need to do. Some people are putting their stuff in front of you for one important reason, so you'll see it more than maybe mine. But I'm telling you right now, we are infiltrating and we're looking good. We are already 20 points ahead of where Rob was at this time 4 years ago, and we are getting closer. There's a reason Andrew Cuomo was running ads against me, and it's not because I'm 20 points behind. So here and then over here. Yes, I promise. Yeah.
Yeah, similar question, but specifically, what is your media strategy? Obviously, you're extremely dynamic, but if you don't get exposure...
Is that obvious?
Yeah, it is obvious. But if you don't get exposure, nobody's going to know. And especially, are you planning to debate Cuomo? Or will he let, so that was my question.
We're going to raise the money and spend to get on the air where we need to. We've had it on TV for for almost 2 months. We did spend a lot of money to do that. That was to get some name ID up in a lot of places. And all I can tell you is that the people who watch TV, like cable TV, some people saw the ads, some people didn't. We're using digital, so we're out there. As I said, when you use digital, you can tailor who sees it, which means, if I'm really trying to get to people who aren't decided, there are probably none of you in this room. I mean, understand that, right? You might be undecided between me and a libertarian candidate, that might be, but you're not undecided between me and Andrew Cuomo. So digital ads allow us to target people that are on the fence, which we spent a lot of money to do. And I'm telling you right now, I know what our polls look like. We're doing okay. Now, as far as debating, that's up to him. I mean, he's the one who created all these rules. He said to Cynthia Nixon, right? He negotiated every detail and then said to Nixon, show up or don't show up. And oh, by the way, sit in a chair. I mean, I'll debate, I mean, I've said this to people. I'll debate him in a chair, I'll debate him at the fair, I'll debate him in a box, I'll debate him in a box. I'll debate an empty chair. I mean, to me, I can talk to a tree. But my point is, it's up to you to say to him, you have to do it. I said they should have an upstate debate since they forgot the other counties in New York in that last debate. He's not going to do it because he doesn't want to be held accountable. Today, he sits in front of the Times-Union editorial board, the governor, and they asked him, Governor, you said 3 years ago, 4 years ago, you wouldn't take any money from anybody who was doing business, in essence, competing for business. His response? Oh, I don't remember that. It's like Mr. Magoo all over again. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes, I'm not going anywhere. Go ahead.
My name is
Elizabeth.
I know that you had mentioned during your introduction that you supported the Second Amendment. Could you just give me your stand on how you approach the SAFE Act and some of the gun regulations that are currently being passed while we sleep?
Well, they're not, the only one, thankfully, you have a reprieve, right? So I don't support the governor's continued expansion. I do support the Second Amendment. We'll use the powers of governor to dismantle it and restore the rights of law-abiding citizens. My commitment is this. We have to be safe. And that legislation didn't make us safe. What will make us safe is investing real help into communities and populations and individuals who deal with violence and abuse and mental health issues where they do act out, if they choose to act out and get violently against one. What the governor has done is made people believe that you can make us safe by checking a box. In fact, his campaign logo is check a box. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, think about how pathetic. It is check a box, like that's done. Yet there are still shootings after shootings in cities all across the state of New York. There are kids going to school today and tomorrow who have school buildings that have been waiting for months, if not years, to get the upgrades for security from a bond and money the state and this governor set aside. And his response was, well, it's the state education department. I'm not responsible for that. Or how about the fact that instead, he sends New York State Police down into New York City, which has among the finest police agencies in the world, instead of putting them in schools as resource officers. So all of those things can happen to keep people safe, but he doesn't want to do that, because then he'll look like he's aligned with people who actually protect other people, which is why it was offensive to me, and I hope to you, when the governor said immigrations and custom enforcement officers are thugs. There was only one thug in that debate. You guys decide who's going between the two of you.
I have a better question.
I think you smoked Cuomo in the debate. I think all of us agree with that. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, good luck.
Well, why aren't they going to have a debate? Is that something?
There's no, see, presidential debates, by the way, are organized by an independent commission. You have to show up. We've actually said there should be an independent commission that creates debates. You know why? Because every incumbent decides they don't want to debate somebody. Even George Pataki, as a Republican, did it. At the end of the day, you deserve a debate among those people who are running, everybody. And I think, I don't see that he's going to want to agree to any of it. But we're going to challenge, are going to take advantage of every opportunity to remind New Yorkers that you deserve it.
All right, well, my main question was, how well do you know the president? If you met him, maybe he can campaign on your behalf at least once?
At least once?
Will we be able to do anything to help that?
Yes.
A rally or something like that?
This is the deal. I think the president has agreed to make pretty clear that he's going to do everything he can to pounce and beat down Andrew Cuomo. And the arrangement that we have is I'm going to run for governor of the state of New York, and he's going to punch Andrew Cuomo. We don't speak. I mean, it's not like we had some phone call. There's no group session. Although I could use a therapy session. Yes, sir. You're done.
I wanted to ask about immigration. But.
Great. No, give it to the other guy.
Mark, my name is Chris Bavlin. I'm one of the original members of this fine organization. I'm also a Town of Milton committeeman, and I help carry your petitions. Mark, what are you touched on something earlier, and I feel it's our biggest problem in this state. It's not taxes, it's not anything else. This state is bleeding population, especially the 18 to 49-year-old crowd. With that in mind, what are your thoughts on illegal immigration and sanctuary cities and the like?
I don't support sanctuary cities, as much as I'd love to be in, we don't get to pick and choose the laws we want. We get to pick and choose the laws we'd like to change, and then you elect people to change those laws. That's how it works. Listen, Congress and the federal government has to confront immigration. They haven't, and I don't know that they really want to. I really, Republicans and Democrats have been blaming one another since well before Ronald Reagan. And the end is that local governments and states are now taking the rules into their own hands. You don't want 50 states having 50 separate immigration policies. And by the way, the governor thumping his chest and stomping his feet isn't going to make that happen. He just wants you to talk about something other than him. So I will tell you that I'll use whatever resources, Governor, to impress upon the federal government that they've got to confront it. I mean, we have a border. We have a border that we need to protect here in New York. We have, by the way, a need in the agricultural community for work-related programs, and we need to be sure that we are protecting ourselves against those who would abuse New York citizens. So again, when the governor says immigration and customs enforcement officers are thugs, well, there was just an MS-13 individual who was arrested for raping a young girl. The thugs that he referenced just found a Nazi conspirator and sent them back to Germany to be held accountable. I don't think you do that. I think that you use the resources of government to protect New Yorkers against those who would take advantage. And I do think the federal government needs an answer, and they need an answer soon, because we're going back to the Articles of Confederation, where every state does its own thing. We cannot afford to have that happen. Security abroad, security at the border, security at home.
Thank you.
I'll get around. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, my name is Renee. I have a couple of questions.
You only get one at a time.
All right. It's kind of like a twofold question. I am definitely seeing a split in the state with Larry Sharp, the Libertarian, and your positions, and it's mostly on the Second Amendment. But I've also listened to Larry's positions on education, and I listened to some of the things that you had to say here tonight, and I'm not quite sure you quite understand how things are anchored in. So you had said, all right, so you had said that you would send the money back. Okay, so we send some money up to Albany, you're going to send it back. But the mandates are not state level. So what are you?
The mandates are state level.
No, they are not.
Okay,
they are not state level.
Which one? Some are.
Well, we have ESSA, which anchors in the Common Core. And it now brings in SEL, which is social emotional learning.
But that was
the social emotional learning is in the platform of the online personalized learning.
You're right, I was in the state legislature, which was accepted by the state legislature and imposed by the State Department of Education on school districts.
Okay, so what is your thoughts on...
Eliminate Common Core.
Well, how do you do that?
You defund it.
Okay, and how are you going to do that?
Not put it in my budget.
Okay, and what are you... What exactly are you not going to put into your budget? I just want to hear what you're not going to do so that we can get rid of this monster that's really destroying so many of our younger youth.
Let me offer you, I've actually listened to Mr. Sharp's conversation about education. We're not really all that far apart, although I do believe in K-12, not K-10, which he does. But that said, the fact that we mandate these institutionalized tests and data collection is where this first begins and goes awry. Defund and eliminate and end the contract. The governor signs the contracts. So don't do that. That's number one. Secondly, by localizing decisions, I'm not saying take the money, send it to Albany, give it back to you. I'm saying keep it. Just keep it. And there is a movement across the nation in response to Common Core. And by the way, even some people who thought they liked Common Core are now agreeing to this localization concept, which is we have to get back to a point where communities work with school boards, work with the school district to establish what they need as outcomes. And then you create, in essence, a community contract that says, in our school district, we want to achieve X, Y, or Z, and the state should just provide broad proficiency expectations. That's it. Kids should graduate knowing how to read, write, and do math. There should be arts and science and athletics. Tell me how you're going to get there. Not me dictate to you, because even what you referenced, 80% of what a school district does is state mandated. 5% more is federally mandated. Very little of what you and I vote on in a school budget has anything to do with any local decision. It's Albany down. And New York is unique in that way. Now, I don't know, maybe I don't want to go out too far on a limb, but many states have eliminated this independent education department, but rather have somebody accountable to the governor and the people. Now, I don't know that we want that model because you don't want politics intruding. But again, I do believe in localizing those decisions, establishing what are broad proficiency expectations. You tell me how you're going to get there. If you get there at less expense, don't give me the money. Don't take the money and give it back to anybody. Just let the taxpayers keep it. You drive down property taxation. Now, when I say localize, that also means saying to entire regions of the state, you know best what you need to educate your kids. What are the jobs that we are trying to create in your community? And what are the partners that you can have in your school district? So I believe in vocational training. I mean, imagine saying to a kid that you're only successful if you do what I tell you. Instead of saying to a kid, if you want to be a mechanic, I want you to be the best mechanic. If you want to be a plumber, I want you to be the best plumber. And let's bring vocational training, let's bring the trades and the private sector into K-12 and start to educate kids both with book training and hands-on training to be educated so that when you graduate, you've got an opportunity to maybe go to work. And by the way, that should follow you into college. Now, you didn't ask me, but I want to take advantage of the fact that I get to talk more than most people do. But we also have to fix special education. We are now Common Core as a broad expectation is demoralizing these kids. I know it because I live it every day. So we have to again be in a position. And we have enough time on that forever, okay? But we have to reform the way we provide special education. And here's one. The governor's shouting about Washington. He shouts about every day he's going to sue them on something else. I mean, the man should be in private practice because he seems to want to be litigating more than actually legislating. Washington promised us in the 1980s funding for special education. They never lived up to their commitment. In New York, what that means is that the states and the school districts, you and I, shoulder a burden for special education that arbitrarily increases our property taxes. It's about $2 billion statewide. So if we're fighting with the federal government, and I would, I'd say, listen, pay your fair share. Because what you're doing is putting kids with special education requirements at a competitive disadvantage. And taxpayers in small school districts are being required to shoulder the burden. $2 billion goes to you, that's property tax relief. That's total property tax relief. So I hope I answered a little bit of the question.
You did a little bit.
I'll let you.
But I guess I just want to ask one more question.
Go ahead, I'll let
leave
you.
it to the floor again.
Only because she's so persistent.
Well, no, I have a lot of passion, especially when it comes to our children.
Me too.
And it's our state and our future. And honestly, I'm ready to leave New York State.
You and a million other people.
So my question is about the Libertarian candidate, Larry Sharp. Would you be willing to debate him?
This is
Don't
what
laugh. I mean, it's a party.
I am not running against
It's
him.
not two party. We should be looking at all parties. And
that's
it's
fair.
obviously a big wave that's coming in from the libertarian side.
I don't think that's obvious at all. I don't think that's obvious at all. Listen, I have no problem. I believe all of us deserve a time on the stage, but I'm not running against him. I'm running against Andrew Cuomo. And he's not
But I think it would be good for
For
both
him.
guys to come along.
It'll be good for him.
It'll be good for
Every
Andrew Cuomo.
candidate, every candidate should be, if you're gonna
Yeah.
have a
So
debate
why
for
should
governor, all of them
so why
be
should
there.
there only be two of us?
Right, there should not be.
Right, it shouldn't only be two of us. I'm with you. It shouldn't only be two of us. It shouldn't only be two of us. The only people, we're all running against one person. We're all running against one person. So if it's 17 people on stage, great. I think at some point you deserve to have a conversation among those people who are likely to win, but I have no problem debating all of us on stage. If you put me there, I'll be there. But I'm not going to spend my next 60 days debating somebody who, sorry, put it differently, who seems to be more focused on me losing than Andrew Cuomo losing. Okay. I don't mind going a little longer. I'm going to go here. Give me 10 more minutes. I'll try to keep my answers shorter.
My name is Mark. I've got a voice.
Mark?
Yes, you could, with a K. You could, and you know I can hail the main top from the quarterback. Everybody knows that. You know, you've done a great job in explaining a lot of the things you would do within the scope of government, of the governor's control, that are under the governor's control. But you still have to deal with a legislature that's going to put big target on your back, you know, from day one. And I'm wondering how mechanic, like, you know, nuts and bolts kind of thing, how you would handle dealing with that. Because you can think, you turn in a budget, they don't pass it, then you got problems.
So first, I'll say something that I don't know is the most popular thing to say in 2018. Just understand that I respect the fact that voters in some places elected people that I have to work with. That's the way it works. I don't get to choose who.
No, I agree.
So I
That's
start.
the problem.
No, that's not. See, the problem is when you have a governor and any executive who absolutely disrespects the other people in office. I mean, the governor actually believes that he is the solution to your problems. I mean, he said it even yesterday. He said that just even if the Senate were to flip and become Democrat controlled, it doesn't mean you're going to get anything. So the point is, he thinks he's the only person who can solve your problems. It wasn't a slip when he said, I am the government. That wasn't a slip. He actually believes it. And he acts in the way that you would see it. I would start by respecting those other people and expecting things. I expect an earnest, honest dialogue. And if you don't want to engage in that, I'll talk to somebody else. Okay? I expect that I will work with leaders who are honest and decent to work with. No.
In New York?
No. But first, listen, my mother taught me a lesson a long time ago. You know that saying, you have to earn somebody's respect? She demanded that we let people earn your disrespect. In other words, I start from the perspective that this is a whole new ballgame. And if you want to play, I'll work with you. But if you want to lie and cheat and steal, I'll work with somebody else. The mechanics is that I will not be held to only working with 3 people. I won't. And I will tell the majority, Republican, Democrat, whoever it is, I will work with individual legislators. You want to send this place in an uproar? You want to turn the status quo on its head as an executive with the legislature? Work with individual legislators on good ideas. Elevate those who have never seen the light of day to a position where their ideas matter. And when we come up, with public policy, instead of only including 4 or 5 people, include more. The governor created a sexual harassment policy that didn't even include, keep in mind, didn't include the one woman leader in the entire state legislature. Didn't include victims advocates. Didn't include any of that. They came up with this idea all on their own. I will absolutely reach past the legislature, engage stakeholders. People have something to win or lose in the conversation. And put in place a mechanism to govern beyond just the legislature. And also, I will do something this governor will never do. This. If I need something to get done, I will come to you. I will ask you to stand up and call your legislators, and I will demand that legislators take the time to listen to you, which is why no message is a necessity, no bending the rules in the middle of the night. We spend the time to have the debate on important issues, and if you're not, then I don't want to hear about it. Lastly, as far as what you said about the budget, first of all, if they don't adopt the budget, it doesn't mean government stops. The governor has a great deal of latitude. But I will stand firm on a few things. I have said absolutely 100% we must vote on term limits. We must vote on term limits. 2 4-year terms for statewide office holders, 6 2-year terms for state legislators. Listen, let them vote no. If you don't like it, let them vote no. But I want to vote. I want to vote. I will sign it. I'll sign it into law. And I've also committed to just 2 4-year terms anyway. And I will live by it. Because what is happening now is a total consumption of power by too few people. The other is bureaucracy. Talk about the elimination of jobs. We're not going to have this shadow government that runs things. We're not going to do it that way. We're going to go to the people on big issues. We're going to go to the public. I believe in initiative and referendums. Give the public some ability to voice their opinion. Not willy-nilly, but allow that to happen so there's greater debate. And so on. I mean, ending the pay-to-play politics. Stop if you're doing a contract with the state, you don't get to make contributions. And I will force them to vote yes or no. I will force them to vote yes or no.
And then stand by their vote.
Yes, and make them justify it to all of you. Yes, sir. You've been very patient.
Saratoga County is doing very well economically.
Sales tax
Primarily
is up.
because I was positioned with New York City, Montreal, and New England. We could do even better if the economics west of here were more healthy. How do you analyze the problem of the economic situation in Mohawk Valley and beyond?
First of all, generally speaking, even as great as you're doing, you're not doing as well as you could if we had lower property taxes and less regulation. And that's where we start. You start by leveling the playing field for everybody and reducing the cost. So I'm committed to property tax relief. Whether I have to say it every day until I finish my tenure as governor, property tax relief makes us competitive again. Significant property tax relief. Deregulation. If again, at the end of the day, I want everybody to be safe and healthy, but if we have a regulation that we can't justify, we shouldn't have a regulation. So really try to peel back the layers of the onion so that there's greater equity and lower costs for New York so everybody can compete. Beyond that, as I said about education, again, we're educating kids for jobs in other states. So we need to develop what do we hope to achieve economically, and then make sure educational outcomes align with our economic development needs. And stop cutting checks to private businesses. I will not, it's not my money, it's not his money. That is not economic development, it's theft. He's taking money from you and giving it to a select few. That's not economic development. So stop any of that. So focus on driving down costs, driving down regulation, making it easier, support existing businesses. 70% of new jobs come from existing businesses in America. Support existing businesses, work with communities to create an environment where they can grow, and instead of wasting money on vanity projects like special blue and gold tiles and tunnels in New York City, invest the dollars in real infrastructure. We need internet access upstate. We need our roads to be repaired so that we can move product and people. We need to invest in transit downstate so that we have greater connectivity. Use government resources for those things, for making a difference in the lives of people. That creates a more economic, a greater economic benefit for everybody, not only a select few. I'm really going to be pained. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a question on.
Is that your son?
I'm Daniel.
Daniel, and that's your son.
So you talk about giving money back to the property tax.
Let you keep it.
Right. So the problem I'm having is I live in Galway, and I vote on a town. I vote
School
on a
budget.
town based, yeah, the school budget. So
Oh,
it's
I'm
the
sorry.
town that I'm voting.
Correct.
That they're gonna raise my taxes. It's not the state, it's the town that decides whether or not they're gonna raise my property taxes. So if you could maybe explain it this way. So let's say that they make it that there have to be electronic defibrillators in every room in the classroom. Every classroom. So now you get rid of a mandate, is what you're saying? So it's no longer the law that they have to have a defibrillator in every classroom, and now the town is going to say, hey, we don't have to abide by this law, so we can save money to the taxpayer and we'll lower our budget. Is that what you're trying to say? I'm trying to understand how you're going to push the money back to me and lower my property taxes by getting rid of mandates.
I wouldn't necessarily use a defibrillator, although I would say that I think the state mandate on school districts is, it's not a defibrillator in every room, but there have to be certain locations. And the state actually provided resources for the first purchase. That wouldn't be the mandate that I would use. I use, for instance, Medicaid. So the short answer to your question is yes. The state mandates districts, towns, villages, counties do certain things. In some cases, they mandate the town, county, school district actually perform the duty that the state would have. Instead of forcing that cost onto local districts, I would say the state holds the program, pays for the program, and by relieving your town, village, city, school district of the cost, they have to reduce their tax levy. That's how you reduce property
Is
tax.
this something that happened? And so I'm not trying to be a jerk, but
You're not at all.
I mean, you're trying to
You're
tell
not.
me that towns that have money now want to get rid of the money. I mean, they want to not get as much money. To me, that's counterintuitive on the way back.
No, well, here's-
No, but are you
let me,
saying then that they're going to say, hey, we don't have to pay for this anymore, so we're gonna lower the cost?
It's
the
not
taxes that
going
amount?
to be voluntary. If the state takes $1 back, they have to cut the tax
That's a
levy
law?
$1.
Is that a New York law?
When I'm governor, it will be.
Okay. That's how, I just want to
Yeah.
understand.
No,
the
my
mechanism
position
you're
is
doing.
the state begins to take back cost. And as we take back cost and create the efficiencies that we deserve, and your town, village, city saves that cost, by design, we will legislate that you have to lower the tax levy to an equal amount. The best example is counties and Medicaid. New York is the only state in America that forces so much of Medicaid spending down onto local property taxpayers and their county governments. So in my case, and most counties are equal to or higher, 70%, 70% of the Dutchess County property tax levy goes to pay for New York State's Medicaid program. No other state does that. My suggestion is over 8 years, we take back Medicaid costs, and for every dollar the state takes back, the counties would have to reduce its tax levy in equal amount. Now, I might give them the option of not doing that, meaning if you don't want to lower your tax levy, then you can keep the cost. But then you explain it to taxpayers. But I believe the way you do this is you start there. The other is their efficiencies. Again, identify savings, and by contract, by design, by legislation, mandate the lowering of the tax levy. That's the only mandate I'd offer, right? You save $1, you don't tax $1. That's how you get the tax levy down. Yes?
Mark, can I just interrupt? Drew, did you want to touch upon that? Drew's our treasurer. I saw your hand up there. Did you?
Don't mind that.
All right. Give me a break.
Good to see everybody in the garage. I wanted to touch on something that really does matter here in New York State, and that is the multiple levels of government that we have.
Yep.
And the bureaucracy between them that really drives costs, because to get anything done, you've got to get several layers of government to all agree at the same time, which is nearly impossible. I can scream as loud as you can. Okay. One of the things that also differentiates us in New York State is you live here in Milton, for instance. You have your town government. You also have your ambulance corps, you have your fire corps, you have your local library, I think you got a village tax here. After that, you're going to have your town tax, and then you have your county tax. You have those layers of government all right here just in the town of Milton. Separate and aside from that, you have a whole nother government called your school board. We have local school districts here that sometimes they overlap with towns, sometimes they don't, sometimes they kind of match up and they go all around. Your local school board is separate and apart from your town government, from your county government, and from your state government. School board votes pass with 100 total votes. 98 for and 2 against. Why? Because it's all the local school employees and their families voting for it. Look around the room. There's probably 150 people in this room. You can make a huge difference on your property tax bill just by getting involved in your local school board. And let's go to the school board meetings and ask these same questions to them. Because one thing I know as your county treasurer, I'm responsible for administering the community college tuition credit. Whenever a student in the county goes to community college, I turn around and I basically pay a third of their tuition bill. That's a $7.5 million expense that we pay every year at the county. $7.5 million. That's a lot of money for our budget and our property tax levy, which is $58 million. So we're already talking, close to 8-9% of our tax levy is just for that educational cost. I'll also tell you this: of your local property tax bill, this much is for county taxes, this much is going to be for your town ambulance and library taxes, and this much is your school tax bill. Here, around here in Saratoga County, between 70 and 80% of your property tax bill is school taxes. That's controlled entirely by that separate government over there that nobody ever talks about. We have to get involved in the school boards and understand what they're doing, because they're the vast majority of our school tax, of our property tax bill. Now add to that the local mandate that I have to do of $7 million in education spending. And Mark, how much of the state budget is spent on education? Roughly. It's a third of the budget. It's roughly a third of the budget, right? So about 35-40%. Add all that up. Education costs are what's killing us in New York State.
Yeah, let me just take one issue though. We've had a history of school budgets failing. You're voting on about 2% of that budget. I mean, understand. I mean, as much as I would love to say it's somebody else's problem, it is Albany. And 98% of that budget is dictated by some decision that was made in Albany. In fact, you have some scenarios where school budgets fail and the austerity budget taxes more than the school budget because of the way the formulas are written. So that all has to be confronted. Your point, though, is correct.
And we need your help to reform that.
I'm happy to. I got to get elected first. This, yes.
Lynn. I'm from Washington County, and
we had a meeting this afternoon regarding shared planning, where the counties are required to have their towns all share make different plans for sharing expenses.
Oh, yeah.
And Washington County came up with like $700,000 that they would be saving if they shared in like fuel and assessing and a few other things. Now, this is for 2018, 2019, and Governor Cuomo's promised that for that $700,000 that they're saving, he's going to give back to the county.
Yeah, if you believe that one.
And what's going to happen when you're president and when you're...
One job.
You're governor next year, what are you going to, well, this,
You know, it's the
they're
same-
making these plans right now. They haven't voted on the plan yet, which is going to take place on the 13th. They're going to vote.
So the governor is playing a game of scapegoat. He says, you know, you local communities figure out how to cut taxes. He's done everything he can to cut property taxes, which is nonsense. I believe, again, in starting from the bottom up. So saying to towns, villages, and cities, listen, if you can coordinate, if you want to do that you should be able to do that, right? And every dollar in savings that you generate should go back in real property tax relief. But if you believe that Albany can dictate from the top down that you're going to see savings in your property taxes, really, I mean, really, I'll give you a bridge to name after you. I mean that sincerely. So, listen, should we all be working together? Yes. Should we all coordinate to the extent we can? Yes. Should we look at eliminating layers? Yes. But that should start with you. As individual citizens, the government closest to you is likely the most responsive to you. And you ought to be able to determine how you want to be governed. And at the end of the day, I just want Albany off your back. So if we take responsibility for our costs, you take responsibility for your costs, and again, by generating the savings, we reduce the tax levy dollar for dollar. But my position is, sure, you should all work together. We do that in my county. But it shouldn't be dictated from the top down. I mean, it was like a mandate to help you address mandates. Sure, that's a solution. I've never heard anything quite like it. It is 8:35. Can I do two quick ones, and then how about you pick two more people? Well, my kids go to school at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning.
I got some online questions. These are just kind of simple yes or no.
I don't do yes or no questions, but go ahead.
Okay. Do you support sanctuary city?
No.
Do you support ill carry reciprocity?
Yes.
Will burn all people consider a safe violation?
As long as there's as long as there's no violent additional charge, yes.
Do you support legalizing marijuana?
Let me do that one last. Go ahead.
Okay.
Because I want to explain. I don't want to just leave it as yes.
Yep. I understand.
Is there anything else?
Do you support codifying Roe versus Wade into state law?
The way the governor's proposed? No, it is already state law. Just so you understand, even if the Supreme Court were to overturn, this state has already codified that right. I do not believe in its expansion to late-term abortion, nor do I believe we should be permitting non-physicians to perform the practice. But it's not being overturned in New York. It just isn't. The state assembly will never let that happen.
Will you veto budgets that include SAFE Act funding?
Well, I'm going to propose a budget that doesn't include it, so I'll start there. I'll veto changes. How's that? On marijuana, I do not subscribe to legalization. I know that that's I do want to be honest. I want to be totally candid with you. I do, however, believe in decriminalization, which means you shouldn't be in jail for that reason. I also believe the state has done a horrible job at making medical marijuana available, or marijuana available for medical purposes. And we haven't done nearly as much to make sure that people who are dealing with ailments that could benefit have access to benefit, and that ought to be a decision that you get to make with your physician. So I think as a state, we ought to be much better and provide accessibility. I say this to you, and I only offer, my daughter has a seizure disorder. She won't benefit from medical marijuana. I just tell you that I know many people who would. And there's certainly other ailments. If they had access, again, through a prescription and a physician, they should. But New York is so regulated that it's nearly impossible.
Okay, I'm going to grab one more. Bruce in the back there. Why don't you?
Bruce, you have been waiting all night. Please tell me that you're not going to yell at me.
No, I'm not going to yell at you.
Okay, good.
Future state pension funding, how are we going to deal with that as far as possible?
Well, I don't believe in sweeteners. So, I mean, just understand that my position is very simply that the state needs to pay its bill. We don't off-budget add benefits that don't exist, which the state has often done, right? The state legislature add what we call sweeteners to the pension program. It's either you negotiate a new tier or you don't make the adjustments. The one issue that we have financially at the moment is that the state did amortize some of its expenditures, borrowed against the fund in order to put off payments. That needs to be addressed quickly. I do not subscribe to that. It's just stealing from both taxpayers and the employees. Right now, okay.
No, I was going to ask, what is the state going to take on, to say, listen, we are going to change these pension, the people that are starting, you can only influence, you can't really change something you already committed to people down the road. But we are not making changes to the people starting off as a state employee.
Well, we have, so tier 5 and then tier 6, I think we should evaluate absolutely the pension program moving forward so that new employees, we consider the impact. But that's something that I think you got to look at in the context of budget. But we have gone from, when I started in government in 1994, it was tier 4. In 2010, 11, 2008 or 9 was tier 5 and then tier 6. So there have been advancements that have limited the benefits to new employees. I do think we ought to continue to look at that. I also, by the way, the SUNY system actually provides an option to employees. You can choose to be in the SUNY system, or you can choose to be in a more traditional, what am I saying? Like, not a 403, yes, not a
403B.
Yes, thank you. It's late. I think that that's worth exploring, and do that in the context of collective bargaining as well, but it creates an environment where maybe you create some diversification and employees can make that choice. But again, it has to be done, the state legislature, of course, has to consider it, and it is only for those who are new employees or employees moving forward. State constitution, for those of you who don't know, prohibits any the taking of any of those benefits once they've been given. And that's just that's the law. Okay. So can I offer you all of you, if I didn't get your question, to the extent I can, please feel free to email us. You can visit Molinaro4NY, MolinaroForny.com. To the extent we can respond, we don't have a big staff. We really don't. There's about 7 people who work at the headquarters. I mean, we have a lot of people volunteering, but we try to get back to every message we can. If you follow me on social media, I apologize. We went from having like 20 or 30 comments on a social media post to now having 200 or 300. We try to respond. Sometimes even at 11 o'clock at night, I'm responding to people. And the funny thing is, I respond to people, and then they criticize me for responding to them. I'm happy to try to do that. But please consider following us on Facebook or Twitter. If you like what you heard, you want to volunteer or help out, please let us know. And please, if you like what you heard, please share our social media presence with others. Well, I didn't want to be bold enough to bring some signs in, but we do have signs in the car. If you want a handful, I'll leave them. And then beyond that, let us know. Morgan Zegers, I want to say Zegers, is running for state assembly. You probably know her. I think the world. I know she's working with Saratoga County Republican Committee and others.
They have signs at the county headquarters.
Yes, so if you want, you can go to the Republican headquarters in any county. They have thousands, if not hundreds, if not thousands available. But we'll get some and leave them here. I think we only have a handful of the back, but we'll bring them in. I just didn't want to assume that you'd want them, so I didn't know.
Well, Mark, let's give Mark a big round of applause.